flights that were able to photograph from 5-6 miles up and take pictures of actually the nuclear sites in Cuba and elsewhere being built, covertly and aimed at the United States. Oswald was there. His fluency of Russian was remarkable, and according to his wife, she thought that he was actually Russian, coming from perhaps a southern province of Russia, but that he in fact was Russian. But he was an American, and he was part of Bill Harvey's false defector program, in which Americans defected to Russia to be put in many different areas of industry or secretarial work, or just to be there and gather information on what was going on. And then Oswald, after I think he lived there 2 or 3 years, I think, and then he defected back to this country with no consequences whatsoever. And everybody, all the real defectors, of course, came back, and they were apprehended and interrogated, and their loyalties to the United States were questioned during interrogations and all kinds of things like that. Oswald just had a free pass. He came and go as he wanted to, and that's because he was a false defector, a part of Bill Harvey's false defector program. So he was a contract mole for the CIA, and I think, of course, the CIA probably destroyed all its contract. They had a habit of not keeping too many files on their contract agents. My mother was a contract agent for the CIA, and all her files have always been missing or destroyed too.
The other name that constantly comes up in this is Jack Ruby. What was he? Just a man who was outraged by what was going on? What was his story? Well,
this is where the tie-in with the American mob does play in, because the American intelligence community, specifically the CIA, had their relationship with the American mafia dating as far back as the 30s during the Prohibition, and of course Meyer Lansky was their financial expert who had invested a lot of money in Havana and the gambling casinos, and of course that was getting kicked back to the CIA because we were keeping Batista in power. So there was a very cozy bedroom relationship between the mob and the U.S. government. So when the mob was called upon to provide service for the CIA, and that service being we have to kill Lee Harvey Oswald before he can testify. Who's your man in Dallas that can do this? Well, their man in Dallas was Jacob Rubenstein, also known as Jack Ruby, who had done a lot of gun running and gun smuggling for CIA-ish type of people in and around Havana, back and forth between Texas, and he was the guy. And so they put it to Jack. This is your service, because they sanctioned, the mob sanctioned. Dallas was kind of an open territory. There wasn't a specific mob chief of Dallas or in that area of Texas as there was, say, in New Orleans or Miami or Chicago and those kind of places. But Jack did come from Chicago. He was a runner for Al Capone in the old days, and so when he wanted to go to Dallas and open up some strip clubs, the mob financed him and said, we'll ask you for a favor one day. And Jack had greased the palms of the Dallas Police Department for years with paybacks, free time with his strippers and his hookers, and all that kind of stuff. So when the mob needed something done in Dallas, Jack was the man they went to, and that's how that happened.
So if I tell somebody, if I say Sarté pulled the trigger, it was not orchestrated, but it was given the okay by Lyndon Baines Johnson, vice president at the time, with what % of accuracy can I make that statement? Is that 100% accuracy, or is there ambiguity there at all?
Well, there's no ambiguity in terms of what my father felt. His first-hand information, he was there during the planning of what was then codenamed the Big Event, and there was absolutely no ambiguity from from the information he had. The only things that he couldn't and he wouldn't comment or opinionate himself on were things that he did not have first-hand knowledge. So when he spoke of Lucien Sarté as being the probable hit, shooter from the grassy knoll, that he prefaced that as an opinion. In his opinion, he knew firsthand that Bill Harvey had brought in a shooter from the Corsican drug underworld, a well-known man that could not be directly connected to the CIA, and he knew that much, and he'd heard the name was Lucien Sarté. Everything after that, where he may have been, if he actually fired the shot or not, were opinions my father offered as an opinion.
But as far as the government knowing it was going to happen, it was a job by the government, and that Lyndon Johnson gave the okay, that's a done deal without any ambiguity. Without any ambiguity whatsoever. There was no ambiguity. My father knew that, for the fact. Now, he never, of course, was at a meeting with Lyndon Johnson, so there again, he was told at these 2 or 3 different meetings at safe houses in and around Miami that this had the approval going all the way to the top, and of course he surmised it had to have been Lyndon Johnson. I think Lyndon probably was asked, would you have a problem with becoming president, in view of the impending problems we have worldwide, Vietnam, et cetera, if anything were to happen to our current president, and I'm sure Johnson was straining at the bit. Did any of Kennedy's people that day think something was up? Did they think, this is a little strange that we're out here, we're in an open car, there is this big grassy knoll area? I mean, obviously, maybe you don't think about that stuff at the time, but he had a lot of enemies. Yeah, I mean, Dallas was a really tough place for him to go to. It was added at the last minute, and the route was changed to make that very sharp turn. The motorcade was ordered to slow down almost at a crawl. The Secret Service detachment that were supposed to surround at all times the open car that the President and Mrs. Kennedy sat in were told to stand down. It's well known that many of them had been given time off the night before and were at a bar having drinks. And there's a film you can see somewhere. I think probably YouTube has it. When the detachment starts pulling out of the airport, there's an order that comes in, obviously, and the Secret Service guys throw their hands up in the air, and they start wandering away from the presidential car. And then the presidential car just slowly starts driving away, and these Secret Service guys are all like, you can tell their arms are up in the air, they're like shouting, what? What's going on? The interesting thing to me is that say that happened, we'll look at the YouTube video, and that these Secret Servicemen walked away. That these Secret Servicemen walked away. And all these people kind of had a piece of the pie. Your father had a piece of the pie knowing what was happening. Obviously, Lyndon Johnson, people in the CIA, Jack Ruby, Oswald, a lot of characters, Sarté. Why did nobody ever come forward? I don't really know the answer to that question. I know that certainly if a secret can be kept, a secret will be kept. And all of these people directly involved pretty much passed away by the time my father thought he was passing away and was not going to go to his grave. Now, I've always felt that there was a lot more he could have said, but being that I didn't live in Miami and was therefore subject to visitation, and then when the cat was kind of getting out of the bag with his then wife and my half brothers and sisters,
they were bitterly opposed to my visiting, and I was basically shut off and sealed. My father was basically sealed away from any contact with me, and he was very, very sick at the very end, and I couldn't even get a conversation with him on the phone. I would call, and there would always be some excuse, and my letters would not be answered. It was just a very hard time.
One of the questions is, obviously we've talked that it has brought a little bit of family bitterness. Why do you think that is?
Well, I know why it is, because my sister, the original Hunt children, my two sisters, were just adamantly opposed to me bringing in, dredging any of this stuff up. They felt the notoriety that my family had already suffered, the related death of my mother during Watergate, that whole scandal, my father's prison sentence, all the accusations about conspiracy and Kennedy and Watergate and all this stuff was just, just too much for them. And of course, his second wife and his second set of children, their careers, they felt they did not want the notoriety. And they did not want to stay. They did not even want to believe. None of them wanted to believe that this was even possible. So, I was basically just removed from the family circle. But I felt that I had a responsibility that my father's wishes needed to be carried out. That was his wish after he passed away, and I was going to do that at the expense of my relationship with all the other members of my family.
Final question. It has ruined some ties with your family. Every member of the Warren Commission is gone with the death of Gerald Ford a few years ago. So many people tied in with this have been harmed, shut up, threatened, whatever it's been, killed. When you speak of this, are you ever fearful?
I was initially when it first came out, when I first spoke of it in I believe it was April of 2007, a few months after my father passed away. And I think the way the press and the way the government handles things like this is not to comment, not to acknowledge, and not to engage. In other words, I'm just a very normal person with a daytime job and a band on weekends, and I'm up here in Eureka, California. How much damage could I do with my rants and raves? My assertions that this and that and this and that. It's all going to go away, and basically that's how the media and I think the government has handled me very deftly. To my surprise, the best way to not encourage a situation is don't give it any substance. Don't comment on it. Don't even deal with it. Just let me rant, and then sooner or later I'll give up.
Well, I tell you, St. John, it's been a tremendously fascinating interview on a tremendously fascinating subject to many people. I think phones are going to be ringing off the hook tonight. I think people are going to be jumping on YouTube. Fascinating information. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome, Scott. I'm glad to talk to you. Thanks a lot.
Scott Spears with St. John Hunt, the son of E. Howard Hunt, on the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Scott Spears headed for the dugout.